The courtroom was completely silent when the judge asked the final question. Everyone in the room believed the case was already decided. The lawyers had finished their arguments. The witnesses had spoken, and the evidence seemed clear. To everyone watching, the outcome looked obvious, but they had no idea what was about to happen next. A young man stood in the center of the courtroom, accused of a crime he had been denying for months. He looked tired, but not defeated. His eyes were calm, as if he knew something that no one else in the room knew. The judge looked at him and said, "Do you have anything to say before the court announces the final decision?" The young man took a deep breath and looked around the courtroom. He saw the people sitting there, some curious, some bored, some convinced that he was guilty. He looked at his lawyer, who looked worried. Then he looked back at the judge. "Yes, Your Honor," he said slowly. "I do. But what I'm about to say will change this entire case." The courtroom immediately filled with whispers. Even his own lawyer looked confused because he didn't know what the young man was talking about. The young man slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "Please give this to the judge," he said to his lawyer. The lawyer opened the envelope, and within seconds, his expression changed completely. His face went from confusion to shock. The judge noticed immediately. "What is in that envelope?" he asked. The document was handed to the judge. The judge started reading it carefully. As he continued reading, his expression slowly became serious. The courtroom became silent again, so silent that you could hear papers moving and people breathing. After a few minutes, the judge looked up and said, "This document contains information that was not presented to this court before." Everyone started whispering again. The document showed a timeline of events that didn't match the accusations. According to the timeline, the young man could not have been at the location where the crime happened. But that was not the biggest surprise. The document also mentioned another person, someone who had never been suspected before. The judge ordered that the person named in the document be called forward. A man sitting quietly at the back of the courtroom slowly stood up. He looked nervous, very nervous. His hands were shaking as he walked to the front. At first, he denied everything. "I don't know anything about this," he said quickly. But then the lawyer presented another document, then a phone record, then a bank transaction, then a message record. The man's face turned pale. After a few minutes of questioning, he finally broke down and said, "Okay, I will tell the truth." The courtroom went completely silent again. He admitted that the young man standing in court was innocent. The entire case had been planned to blame him. Someone had paid him to give false statements and create false evidence. The judge immediately stopped the proceedings and ordered a full investigation. The young man closed his eyes for a moment. Months of stress, fear, and loneliness suddenly felt very heavy. But he didn't smile. He just stood quietly, because he knew the story was not over yet. The real mastermind. Weeks later, the investigation revealed something shocking. The real mastermind behind the false case was a powerful businessman. The young man had once worked for his company and had discovered illegal financial activities, money laundering, fake accounts, and illegal transfers before the young man could report the fraud. The businessman planned everything to trap him in a false criminal case. But the businessman made one mistake. He underestimated the young man. The envelope that the young man brought to court contained copies of emails, transaction records, and voice recordings. He had secretly collected evidence to protect himself in case something went wrong. That one envelope saved his life. The businessman was arrested, and the case was closed. The young man was declared innocent. The media covered the story for weeks. Everyone called it a miracle courtroom twist. But instead of celebrating, the young man disappeared from public life. A different life. Years passed. The young man started helping people who were falsely accused and could not afford lawyers. He worked quietly and did not tell people about his past. He just helped people because he knew what it felt like to stand alone in a courtroom while everyone thought you were guilty. He helped many people win their cases. Slowly, people started recognizing him. One day, a judge asked him, "Why do you help strangers so much?" He smiled and replied, "Because one day, I was standing where they are standing now, and someone helped me." The judge looked at him for a moment and said, "The court needs people like you." Years passed again, and he became known as someone who never gave up on the truth. But then one day, something happened that changed his life again. The old man and the old file. One evening, an old man came to his office. The old man looked tired and weak, but his eyes were serious. He placed a file on the table and said, "This case was closed 20 years ago as an accident." But it was not an accident. The young man opened the file and started reading. The more he read, the more strange things he found. Missing reports, incomplete statements, and documents that didn't match. The old man said quietly, "Powerful people were involved. That's why the case was closed quickly." The young man asked, "Why are you giving this file to me?" The old man replied, "Because I don't have much time left, and the truth should not die with me." The young man looked at the case file again. He had no idea that this case was about to change his life forever. File number 47. He started investigating the old case. After weeks of searching through old records, he found an old evidence file, file number 47. Inside the file, he found a photograph. When he looked at the photograph, he froze. The photograph had his father in it. His hands started shaking. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. He went home and started searching through his father's old belongings. After hours of searching, he found an old notebook hidden in a box. Inside the notebook were notes written by his father. Evidence removed. Witness changed statement. Pressure from powerful people. If anything happens to me, the truth is in file 47. He sat there in silence for a long time. He realized something that night that changed everything. His father didn't die in a normal accident. His father was trying to expose something big, and that accident was planned. This was no longer just an old case. This was personal. The hidden box. He went back to the old evidence room and searched again. This time he found a small metal box hidden behind a broken cabinet. Inside the box were audio tapes, photographs, and a letter written by his father. The letter said, "If you are reading this, it means I could not finish what I started. The accident was not an accident. Powerful people are involved. If you find this, do not be afraid of the truth." His hands were shaking as he finished reading the letter. He then played one of the audio tapes. The recording had two men talking. "Close the case quickly," one voice said. "Call it an accident." "And the witness?" the other voice asked. "Money is already given. He will change his statement." He stopped the recording. This was real evidence. After 20 years, the truth was still alive. Reopening the case, he decided to reopen the 20-year-old case. Many people laughed at him. They said nothing would happen after so many years. They said powerful people were involved. They said he was wasting his time. But he didn't stop, because this time, he was not just fighting for a case. He was fighting for his father. The court finally agreed to review the new evidence. During one of the court hearings, an old witness stood up and confessed that he had changed his statement 20 years ago because he was threatened and given money. The courtroom was shocked. The court realized that the case had been closed with hidden evidence. The investigation reopened, and it was discovered that his father had uncovered a financial fraud involving powerful people. Before he could report it, the accident was planned to silence him. Police reports were edited, witnesses were bribed, evidence was removed, and the case was buried for 20 years. The final court decision. After many hearings, the final court decision day arrived. The courtroom was full. Reporters, lawyers, and many people were present because this case had become very famous. The judge read the final report for a long time and then said, 20 years ago, this court closed a case calling it an accident. Today, this court admits that the case was closed with incomplete investigation and hidden evidence. This was not an accident. This was a planned crime. The courtroom was completely silent. After 20 years, the truth finally won. The final scene. Later, he visited his father's grave and said quietly, "It took 20 years, but the truth finally won." After that, he opened a legal help center for people who were falsely accused or who could not afford lawyers. He named the office after his father. Whenever someone asked him why he helped people so much, he always said, "Because I know what it feels like when the truth is on your side but no one is standing beside you." One day, a student asked him, "What is the most important thing I should remember if I become a lawyer?" He replied, "Law is not just about rules. Court is not just about arguments. Cases are not just about winning or losing. The most important thing is never fight just to win a case. Fight to make sure the truth is not ignored." Final ending lines used for video ending. And that is the story of a case that took 20 years. A son who finished his father's fight, and a truth that refused to stay buried, because lies can run fast. Power can hide the truth. Time can bury the truth. But if even one person refuses to give up, the truth can still win in the end. And that is why the court didn't expect this ending.